Catherine is the host of Live, Love, Learn podcast, where she has interesting discussions that nothing is off limits. Catherine is an holistic biologist and educator who's created an incredible range of courses designed to support the health and well-being of both humans and animals. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Catherine, can you start by sharing with us about your journey and what led you to becoming an holistic biologist?
Oh, I'd love to, and I'll try and keep it brief because it's quite a long history. But in a nutshell, I've always grown up around animals. My mother and father were very passionate about animals. We had everything from dogs, cats, rescued a lot of chickens, rescued a lot of wildlife. And then I was very lucky after years and years of badgering, I got my own horse when I was a teenager. And then you never saw me again. I was just constantly with my horse. But I really noticed a difference growing up in the countryside and growing up around animals. Even when I was growing up, which was a long while ago now, I could notice the shifts in veterinary care and medical care. So when I then went at school, I loved school. I loved learning. And I was always that awkward child that asked loads of questions. Why? What? How do you know this? Which was very, used to get me moved to the back of the class for asking too many questions. But when I then decided what I want to do, no one else in my family had been to university because they'd always had to go out to work and support the family. So I was very lucky I had that opportunity. And I looked into veterinary medicine, I looked into being a doctor. And even all those years back in the 1990s, I just thought I can't go down this route because it's not proper healthcare anymore. I could see even back then that it was very pharmaceutical led and that we weren't educating on how to keep an animal or a human healthy. It was really sort of crisis management. So I decided to biology and I absolutely loved biology. I mean, there's a lot of criticism of the education system now, and I think a lot of that is justified. However, I think as we go through this conversation, I think a lot of it is down to the individual. So I learned everything from physiology, anatomy, microbiology, parasitology, animal behavior. It's so wide biology because it's basically the study of every living thing. And I absolutely loved it. And it set me on a journey of just asking different questions. And when I left university, I went traveling, mainly around Australia, actually. So I went traveling for a year. But I wanted to work with animals, but when I grew up, there wasn't a lot of choices. You could be a vet, a veterinary nurse, or basically a scientist doing experiments on animals. I did get a couple of job offers to go and study because animal behavior was my passion, sort of out in the jungle in Africa. But at that stage, I had a very old horse and I couldn't leave her. I do take that guardianship if you've got an animal in your life very, very seriously. So I stayed, went into a variety of different careers. And it's interesting, when 2020 hit, I was of the generation where we were told to go and get a good job with a good company that had a good management development scheme and a good pension scheme. And all my friends went and did that. In fact, most of my friends from biology ended up in the pharmaceutical industry. And I moved from job to job to job, which was actually very unusual and got me a lot of criticism from my parents. But I did telecoms, environmental management of telecoms. I did environmental management. I worked in as a project manager in the health service because what I realize now, looking back, it wasn't a conscious plan as I was acquiring all these different bits of knowledge that as I got older, I realized how they all linked in. And also, I'm the type of person that I was very much brought up. You don't moan about things, you change them. And so if I wasn't happy in a job or wasn't feeling that I was developing or it was fulfilling me, I didn't moan about it. I just tried something new. And then when I had my children, that was a complete game changer. And I'm sure you've probably felt the same. It changes your perspective on anything in life. And I had a long, hard look at myself. I was at the stage where we had to have both my husband and I working. Things, cost of living, very high, UK, very expensive to live if you want to be able to afford things like good quality food, etc. Now, of course, in hindsight, I might make different decisions, but that was where I was with my level of knowledge at the time. So I decided to retrain into my real passion, which is holistic health. And I started with animals because at that stage I had an old horse, my mother had loads of animals, my friends had animals, and I was like, this is so unfair. The animals get the raw end of the deal. We as humans, unfortunately, through no fault of our own, make very bad decisions for them that cause a lot of the problems, and then there's no help available for them. So I studied everything from iridology, herbal medicine, zoopharmacognosy, which is a form of herbal medicine using all natural products, including essential oils, where instead of us as the humans thinking we know best and prescribe things, the animal self-medicates. Light therapy, holistic healing, animal communication, and that study's never stopped really, and I love every minute of it, because what I've learned is the more that we understand what's going on in our world now, because I think everyone listening to this understands chronic diseases in humans and animals are the highest ever, we have to look for different solutions.
So, what then led you into creating courses for people to hear your knowledge?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think what I was doing when I was working one on one with clients, I was realizing, and still am, that the same issues come up a lot. And I think when you're on this, whether you call it an awakening journey, questioning journey, to look into different ways of doing things on holistic lifestyle, holistic health, what's going on in the world stage, why are people so stressed and sick, you realize the same questions come up over and over again. Because we're all learning and changing all the time, sometimes we forget where we started, and that actually we need to go back to basics, because people don't know this stuff because they're not taught it. In fact, they're actually taught the exact opposite. So what I started to do is put some online courses together so that people could, in a very cost-effective way, learn what they needed to start empowering themselves. And actually, I've got about 10 other courses that I'm halfway through doing. It's just the time to get them up and running. It's quite time-consuming to get the courses up and running on a platform, because, again, I've been making a list of all the top questions, whether it's humans or animal health, and making affordable resources that people can go in, they can ask questions, they can keep referring back to, they can have information at their fingertips, so they're in discussions with other people, they've got some resources there to help them, because all of us are busy, we've all got different pressures on us, whether it's young families, whether it's looking after elderly patients, whether it's full-time work, whether it's, so each of us, we haven't got the time to research everything. So what I try and do in my courses is put the research together. Some of the courses are very research based for people, and some of them are very practically based, so that you can say, look, if I really want to just do the essentials, this is what I need to do for myself or my animals. And that's really why I started the podcast, because back in 2020, when the pandemic, as I like to call it, hit, it was a very difficult time for me. I was selling one of my businesses because I did actually have my own online natural product shop, which was really, really successful, and I never planned to have. But I'm sure you've seen this, Ebony. When you're working with people and you're on this journey, people want to know, well, what products are safe? What aren't safe? How do I get hold of this? And when I started on that journey, I was horrified at how much mismarketing there is. You know, even take something simple like a magnesium supplement. There's so much rubbish out there that could actually do more harm than good. So my clients started asking me to, well, can you find a good one for me? And I was spending hours and hours of unpaid work. So then I started supplying it. But like anything in business, it grew through its own success. And I then turned into a manager. So I'd sold it in 2020, just as the pandemic hit. My father was actually dying of cancer at that time, which was a very difficult time. And I was seeing all these things coming up, and I just wanted to have conversations, and I had different questions to the ones I was hearing on podcasts. So there was no plan, Ebony. I just thought, I'm going to try my luck. I just started the podcast really for me because I wanted to learn more and connect with like-minded people across the globe. And like most of my careers, it's just snowballed beautifully, because when you're following your passion and equally, I wanted to have conversations. I don't know if you find this, but quite often our family and friends are the ones that don't want to hear the information. I was thinking, well, if I can have credible other people that they're not close to and attached to and haven't got a preconceived idea about, then people might listen to some of this stuff.
Yeah, like I shared with you bit off air before we started recording, is this is exactly why I started the podcast, is to fill up my cup and learn and grow whilst I'm in this stage of life where I've got two young children, like courses and learning in that scale. I'm always doing some sort of course and stuff, but more so studying and things right now is I'm like, this is exactly what's good for me to fill up that cup. So then I don't have to talk about the things I'm listening to on podcasts that may be a bit like, who is this woman who's sitting at the end of the table and we're at this barbecue? We've just met the neighborhood friends or whatever. And now I can just act like a normie and just like have surface level conversations and then bring it here. And then it's like, if someone wants to jump on and listen, they can come for the ride. And if they don't, they don't. And I can then actually differentiate how to then, because like you said, your family and friends don't want to hear it sometimes.
No,
And
they
they
don't.
don't want to be told what to do. And whilst I definitely don't want to come across as a person that tells my friends and family what to do, there's definitely times, I may. So it's
Yes.
really hard. I really love that you brought up the fact that it's such a, I guess, quote unquote taboo to jump between jobs, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
you're so right. I'm the type of person that would do that as well. Like I'm always trying something new. And it must be like for people who try catch up with me on socials or family that are asking my mum or my family, like, how's Eb? And it's like, oh, she's doing this now, she's doing this now. And this is just who I am and I love it. And I don't think I'll ever change. I think I've probably got 47 more business ideas that will come across till the day I die. And I love that for me.
Brilliant.
I think it's a flex really. Like I'm not the type of person that personally would want to stay in one job working for someone, asking people for if I can please have some time off or can I please have a sick day to be with my children because they're unwell. Like doesn't work by me. So, uh,
Me too.
coming back to you, what role does stress play on our overall health? Because stress is definitely a topic that me and my friends are talking about at the moment, on top of all of our little like knickknacks that we do for our health.
Oh, I love it. And stress is such an interesting one because I think it conjures up different things for every people. So if I ask my mother about stress, my mother was born during the Second World War. Grew up in London, bombs everywhere, lost loads of family members. So someone of that generation sort of looks at our generation. Well, obviously I'm a very different generation to you, but every generation has their own stressors. But these days, the thing is about stress is really anything that pushes your mind, body, spirit out of balance. And what a lot of people, when they think of stress, they think of, I'm being overworked, I don't get on with my job, I'm going through a divorce, I'm moving house, the obvious ones. But actually, stress is also chemical stress. So, all the toxins in our body, it's the hidden electrical stress, like the EMFs, the radio waves that we're all being bombarded with, which have a huge effect on our biology. Of course, it's stress of physical injury, I mean, everyone recognizes that as an easy one. And it's emotional stress. And there's such a knowing now about how trauma is stored in the body if we don't release it. But in a nutshell, stress is in a lot of areas of the world that we think would be most stressful. Stress isn't really even in their vocabulary or recognized as any sort of disease because stress can also be a disease of what we would call the overprivileged. We've got so much choice at our fingertips now. You've only got to go into the baby aisle of a supermarket and you're faced with all these different choices, none of which someone like you would actually want. So that's really stressful. It's stressful thinking, my goodness, I can't even pick up a simple item of food in the supermarket without wondering what they're trying to poison me with. So, stress plays such an impact in our lives, and it really knocks us off balance so much on a physical level, an emotional level. And what it really does on a physiological level is keeps us in the flight or flight response, which is the adrenaline rush. But people don't realize, as well as the flight or flight response, there's always also something called the freeze response, which is when you're so overwhelmed you do nothing, bit of the burying your head in the sand, or the fawn response. And the fawn response is, if people have heard of Stockholm syndrome, where people start to identify with their abusers, the fawn response is a typical example would be during COVID, when people are so stressed and they want to fit in, they'll go along with what everything's being told. They'll wear a mask or do things, even though deep down it doesn't feel comfortable. They want to be part of that tribe. They want to fit in so badly that they'll put it across. And anytime you've got that conflict going on in your body where you're not being true to your values, you're being poisoned by toxins, all these things pushing you out of balance, your body responds by producing stress hormones, and they will affect you, everything from your digestive system, your menstrual cycles, from the men, your hormonal cycles, your sleep cycles, your ability to digest your food, your irritability, your personality. Every single bit of your anatomy and physiology will be pushed off balance. And we're so resilient as humans and also animals that we can cope with so much, but then there'll suddenly be that event, that thing that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, as they say, that people then will go into depression, anxiety, they'll have some major health issue. And these things have been building up for ages. And nowadays, there's very different stressors. You know, as a mother of two children in their early 20s, I look at this and I'm a bit of tough love. I think actually I genuinely believe we've been programmed through our education, our medical systems, our media to be so unresilient now. You know, I grew up in a time where you just got on with it and you had to be quite self sufficient. Obviously, we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones, you were outside most of the day. And nowadays, I think people have been so taught and brought up not to take accountability for themselves that the stress is an epidemic because you haven't got that resilience in place. And I don't think it's the people's fault. I think it's a deliberate plan. You know, our food's pumped full of toxins, our air, our water. Everyone's got a mobile phone that you're being, you know, when I grew up, if you were going to be bullied, you had to be bullied to your face. Nowadays, there's so much toxicity online, a lot of very good stuff as well, but it's confusing for people. So I think a lot of the stresses now are where people are just bombarded with so much information, most of which in bite-sized form that isn't going into any depth at all. They just sort of get analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis, and they just don't know what direction to turn.
So, how would you define true health and well-being in today's world? And what are some things you do in your own life to ensure that you are kept healthy despite what's around us?
Oh, that's such a good question because working holistically with humans and animals, most people will say to me, I eat a really healthy diet or my animal eats a really healthy diet. But we've only got to look at the difference of what we might eat in UK to what someone in Finland might eat to say what everyone's definition of what's healthy is based on their programming. So what I would say is if someone's healthy is they're wanting to spring out of bed in the morning. They're excited for their day. They're non-reactive. They're able to take criticism, different opinions. They've got energy throughout the day to do what they want to do, and that'll be different for all of us. That they feel quite satisfied with their life. You know, they don't feel overwhelmed all the time. They feel on purpose. They feel that they've got enough vitality, energy, motivation to do the things they want to. And if anyone hasn't got all of those, you know, it's like, um, then your body's telling you something. So we see chronic fatigue and people not having the vitality to do stuff. You know, everyone should be able to climb a tree, run 5K, have the energy to last throughout the day without having all these peaks and troughs. If you're a woman, you should be having healthy, pain-free menstrual cycles, regular pain-free menstrual cycles. If you're my age and you know, I'm actually quite old to be going through the menopause, but just going through it now, touch wood, I've had no issues whatsoever. And if you look at places like Japan, they don't have menopausal issues, but we've been taught to hear that poor health, poor vitality, being on medications is normal and it's not. So I think first bit about being healthy is taking a really good look at your life and sort of saying, really, how am I? Am I sleeping well? Is my skin clear? Have I got lots of energy? Can I touch my toes? Can I climb a tree? Can I keep going all day? Can I play with my kids? Am I feeling anxious? Am I reaching for distractions? Like, you know, am I overindulging in alcohol, cigarettes, any sort of distraction that it might be? And if you're not, just being honest with yourself and doing that good self audit because there's nothing to be ashamed of. We are remarkable. Our bodies have the most amazing ability to keep going and serve us. But we're so bombarded by things that are going to push us out of balance. It's not about blaming yourself for choices you've made. It's just when you have that light bulb aha moment to think, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that all the saucepans I was cooking with are toxic and are poisoning me. Why would I? I'm not a psychopath. I would never design something like that. Of course, I wouldn't assume someone else is. But thank you for telling me. I'm now going to save up for a new set of saucepans or a water filter or some EMF protection. So, in terms of what I do, my non negotiables are my morning and evening routine. It's such a cliche, but if you get your morning and evening routine right, everything else will flow. And that means coming off your device several hours before bedtime. You know, as a young parent yourself, I'm sure you've seen how tempting it is for people to be on their devices all the time. But children are gonna pick up our habits of what we do, not what we tell them to. So we can't be telling a child that you mustn't be on your device all the time and then being on it ourselves. We have to have that discipline and set the good habits ourselves. So having a strict bedtime routine as much as you can. Of course, there'll be exceptions when you're at a wedding or a work do. I'm not talking about that, but most of the time, have a good bedtime routine. Have your bedroom set up so it's an EMF free zone. Ideally, you don't have your phone in the room. I'll talk about exceptions for that because I have to have mine in the room because my mother's on her own now and, I don't have a landline. So I have protection, really good EMF protection to mitigate those risks and making sure that you're well hydrated and that you're eating a really good whole food diet. And with the diet side of things, Ebony, there's so much controversy there. Everyone you speak to will have a different opinion from everything from carnivore to vegan. I've been in this game long enough to know you can be healthy with most diet choices so long as you're eating a good variety of the best quality real foods that you're able to source. And when you're not able to do things, that you've got tools in your toolkit to sort of help mitigate that, build your microbiome, absorb the toxins, etc.
I could listen to you speak all day. Your voice and your accent is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So, being a mum of a 3-year-old and just turned 6 months old, there were some things you said in there that I was like, oh, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So, I guess from a seasoned mother to a new mother, how could you help me, or what advice would you give about not being so reactive to the teenagers' emotions and the tantrums and the big feelings whilst being so triggered?
It's such a good question. And first and foremost, I would say every child is unique. So there's only 23 months between my son and my daughter. So the second comes around, you think, I've got this sorted. I've learned a lot. Boy, oh boy, they'll come to teach you some lessons. So first and foremost, I would say to any parent and to you, Ebony, is understand that we can do as parents is the best we can with the information we've got. But and being a seasoned parent, I trust me, I have made loads of mistakes. You know, I covered briefly about my work side of things, and I would make very different decisions now, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. So for be about being not triggered, the first and foremost would say is making sure, which I'm sure you are, you're doing as much as possible to keep your physical body as healthy as possible. Now, when you've got a new baby, when you've got a 3-year-old, you don't have too much control over your sleep. You can't control if they're going to wake you up in the middle of the night. But what you can do is have a really clear bedtime routine for yourself and them. Sometimes it will go well with children. Sometimes it won't. So it's not about what you can't control, it's about what you can. I would also say that a lot of people, we talk about the terrible twos and tantrums, and every child is different. My children never had tantrums as toddlers. Not that I was doing anything right to cause that. They were different personalities. My children were very difficult babies. They never slept. And again, now I look back and I can see some better things I could have done, like early chiropractic treatment or cranial sacral and things like that, that I just didn't know about at the time. But when you're looking at being reactive to your children, I think this is where having some really key stress management systems in place for yourself are key because it is exhausting. We don't get given a handbook for how to deal with these situations, but breathing exercises and grounding People dismiss them because they're so simple, but they absolutely work, whether you're dealing with yourself, a child, an angry boss, or a scared horse that you're on that's just about to kill you by reacting to something. It's the same. Because when we control our breathing, we change the whole energy field around ourselves. And children are so perceptive. Did you know they've done studies that show that if, and I'm only using this as an example because this is what the example was in the study. When a father comes back into the house at the end of a day's work, this was a study they did, even if the baby was asleep upstairs, if the father came in a bad mood, they'd start crying, the baby would start crying. Babies and animals and children and animals can pick up our energy fields way better than most humans have, because as we get older, we get more in our head and less in our heart. So the first thing I would tell any mum is get with some breathing exercises that work for you. And they're so simple. There's so many free. You don't have to go on a Wim Hof course, although they're brilliant if you do. But there's so many simple free videos on YouTube. Box breathing is an absolutely brilliant one because it brings your autonomic nervous system back into balance. And you can do it in the supermarket. You can do it when you're driving safely. You can do it anywhere. And it gives your chance for your nervous system to reset very, very quickly, and then you won't find you're reacting to those triggers and your child in the same way. So it's very stressful when your child's crying, very, very stressful, because you want to be able to soothe it and you don't always know what's wrong immediately. But if you can calm yourself down with your breathing, if you can do that outside with bare feet, you'll get even quicker results. Then you will then notice that will calm your child down quicker than anything you can say or do.
People tell me all the time, and I have a few friends that can resonate that when I'm away from my toddler and then I come back, so I pick her up or I come back from popping out to the shops and that the whinging starts or just the whinging starts and her complete energy shifts to being a bit more just, I guess, the first words coming to my mind is harder. It's not really the word I want to use, but
Yeah.
like just harder to deal with. And it just happened today because we had our incident with Sage last night. And so we left her at a friend's house and it was kind of like her first sleepover. So we just came to the understanding that we picked her up and the whole car ride home, it was just straight away. It was just like, oh my goodness, this is huge. And the rest of the afternoon has been pretty, like, just really
Yeah.
difficult. And when I walked into my friend's house to pick her up, she said, "Oh, she wasn't like this before you came home." So I constantly am like, what am I doing? Like wrong. Like I'm listening to the podcast and listening to the connection and the attachment things that I need to be doing to build up my attachment with her. I'm trying to be more gentle and listening and listen to all the gentle parenting and the aware parenting and all of the podcasts to be like, what am I doing wrong? Like, is it me? So I believe it is because, and so if you said to me today, like, yep, like it's obviously you picking up on you, I wouldn't deny it. Like, I think I've got so much going on in my head and I'm not embodied all of the time. So, what are some tools? So you said the breathing, but is there anything else that you could just that comes to mind that could help me understand why when I walk into the room, she completely changes?
First and foremost, I would take that as a compliment because, fun enough, I've just published a blog, and trust me, this is relevant, on animal behavior and what people label as bad animal behavior. And often people don't like hearing it, but there's so much that our animals can teach us because animals don't speak to us in human language. And so they have to react in body language. So when your daughter's doing that, it's because she's communicating with you and she hasn't got the vocabulary to say it like an adult would. So she's communicating with you in behavior. And the fact that it's you that she's acting up with like that is not an insult to you, it's a compliment to you because she sees you as the person that's responsible for her. So, first and foremost, I think for parents, it's really, really important not to blame themselves. There's a big difference between us saying, oh, there's things I can do to help control my emotions that are helpful for everyone else, particularly my children, but that doesn't mean I'm causing their issues. So, it's just showing what a really beautiful close bond the two of you have got. So I think acknowledging that and sort of saying, wow, I've done really well. My daughter really trusts me to be the one that she can be really raw with. is really beautiful. But the other thing is, this is where teaching our children these resilient things, they're so brilliant because most children or animals teach us the areas of the life where we can do more for ourselves. And it is very, very true that if you've got a happy, calm, balanced, non-reactive parent, then you're much more likely, not always though, and I'll come on to that, have that in your child. I can remember, Ebony, when I went to my first baby massage class with my son, this was so embarrassing. And my son cried and cried and cried a lot. He was a very colicky baby. He was an emergency cesarean. It was a hideous experience, best pregnancy ever. Birth did not go to plan. And I now, in hindsight, I'd have got him craniosacral therapy. I'd have got him a very gentle chiropractic adjustment, but I didn't know those things at the time. So I was doing what I had in my toolkit. And this massage therapist sat down, and everyone else's babies were quiet to sleep, and Joe was screaming. And she turned in front of the whole group and said, "Well, it's always the mother's fault." If like that. And it was so humiliating because mine was the only baby screaming. And of course, then I got even tenser and I was like, this is so embarrassing. It was awful. Obviously, I didn't go back to her. But what I would say is, in terms of what you can do, is first and foremost, do you journal at all?
I do, but not enough.
I'll tell you why. That I've done a lot of, with the work I've done over the last few years, I've done a lot of work with cult survivors, trauma victims, etc. Because what we're being bombarded with and the mind control affects all of us at a subconscious level. And what happens is, as a mum, and correct me if this isn't relevant to you, we have so much in our head the whole time about what we've got to do to sort the whole family out. And fathers out there, I am not saying you do not have the same pressures. They'll just be slightly different. So this isn't derogatory to the dads out there at all. But as a mum, you're trying to make the best decisions. You're trying to look after yourself, the whole family, keep them happy. And that can put us very much in our headspace. And it's like a scrambled signal. It's literally like the static coming off our phones. She will pick up on that. So one of the things that you can do is find something that resonates with you that's going to get those worries that you didn't even necessarily have out of your head and release them. And talking to a good friend can be great, but there's something special about journaling. And trust me, I don't make time for it as much as I should. But when I'm stressed, I do, because they've physically proven when you handwrite, it changes the neuroconnections in your brain. That's why trauma victims need to write out their experience, not type it out. So, one of the things that would be worth you exploring is, when you do get a quiet moment, which I know is probably not a lot with two young children, to actually even just 5 or 10 minutes of journaling. It can be on a bit of paper that you screw up and throw away afterwards. You don't have to keep it. It's not to review and look for patterns, it's to get it out. And that actual handwriting changes the neural pathways in your brain and releases it in a way that just talking about it doesn't. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and again, this isn't always possible for people, so I'm just giving options, but exercise. So when an animal's holding on to stress, they'll shake it out. If you've got a cat and dog in your life, you'll notice when they get up, they stretch it out. That's where we get the downward dog pose from. What we want to do is move our body to release that stored energy. So 5 minutes on a rebounder, a walk around the block, some basic stretching exercises outside when you're grounding. Anything you can do, if you can imagine, to discharge that static energy or that thought process or all the things you're thinking about. Because when children act up, what they'll do is, we as parents will walk into the room and we'll be thinking, I've got to get your dinner, I've got to get to bed, I've got to do this. And they pick up that lack of presence. So it's nothing to be scared about or guilty about. Every single parent will feel this, but actually, when we can let it go through breathing, or some people will do it through exercise, some people will do it through journaling, some people will do it to talking it through with a good friend. But we have to get those things that are in our head that we're worrying about out, so that when we come to them, we're not walking in and they're not picking up on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just actually got me think. I've been thinking this for a while now, about addictions, because I
Yeah.
think we have a huge focus on smoking and vaping and drinking, gambling. However, I definitely have a phone addiction, and I've been thinking lately, like, I've downloaded the apps, but I always find a way. I'm like, wow, like this is not good. And my kids are obviously watching. That's one. But two, the to-do list addiction. Like it's like I can't, the addiction to always feeling like I need to do it all, and also knowing how to ask for support because I've got the community that are there, but I just feel like I need to do it all. But it's like there's an addiction to a to-do list. Like even just before I've got paint on my hands, I keep seeing it when I put my hands up. I knew my partner is going to be taking daughters out for the afternoon whilst I do this. You know, it's just an hour and a half. They have their time, I have my time, but my daughter said, "Will you paint with me, Mum?" And I instantly just said no because I looked around and the house had so much to do. And then I have to go, why did I just say no? I don't even have a real reason. I'm looking at this thinking, but I can't do this because there's toys on the floor and the kitchen's a mess. And then I was like, Ebony, you're having your afternoon by yourself. Do painting with her. Set a timer, even if it's for 20 minutes, and
Yeah.
put your phone away and be connected with her. But I acknowledge that that's really hard for me to do sometimes. Like, why is that?
I think, first of all, you can see how much work you've done because you're aware of it. And every single person listening to this will have an addiction. I've got addictions. So, my teenage children said to me, they are the ones that say to me, put your phone away. My children are not on the phone nearly as much as I am because I run my business through my phone largely. And that's beautiful to have that feedback. But there's a really good book that I've just read and listened to on Audible called The Dark Side of Discipline by Craig Ballantyne. I would recommend listening to that or reading it, whatever's easiest for you. But it's so simple. Most things in health, in stress management, in life are simple. And that's why people underrate them. But sitting down and just having a conversation with someone else, whether it's your partner, whether it's a friend, and just like this and saying, right, I've recognized this. If you can get yourself away from your phone, I would say it's an absolute must now because your children are already subconsciously picking up that behavior. And you will not be able to break it from them when they're older because it's so ingrained. Between 0 and 7, the subconscious mind of children is picking up everything like a sponge. So now is an absolute critical time. And you will feel so good when you do it. So even if you start off small, one of the things when I'm working with people is we pick the top thing to start with because most of us try and work on too much at once. So I would say pick some hours and put your phone in another room. Remove the temptation. So for me, I've got a bad temptation with bread, for example. And if I've got a packet of biscuits, even though I love nutrition, because I do so much exercise, I don't tend to put on weight, but that doesn't mean it's good for me. And so I don't live anywhere near the shop, so I just don't have the bad stuff in the house. With your phone, you can't do that because you've got to have it in the house. But you can have a habit where you say, I'm setting aside, I'm not going to look at my phone before this time in the morning, and I'm going to put it away by this time at night. And then you can say, I'm going to block out some time for my children where I'm not going to have my phone with me. If you're out and about for safety, you can have it in your handbag, but off, because we can talk about EMF protection, which I know you've covered with someone else another time, but it's so real and it's so dangerous for children. I mean, this is something I'm expert in because I studied this for a long while before people were publicly talking about it with my job with Nokia. So I think for you, recognizing that, and I promise you, if you just came up with some really strict habits, build yourself out gradually. If you start going to the gym, it's not going to do you any favors going from nothing to an hour a day every day of the week. It's not going to do you much good. Start off small and say, right, I'm going to detox my phone at this times and ask friends and family to help you and then gradually build it up. Because not only will you notice your children will respond differently to us, because again, they've done studies when we're scrolling on this, even when we're listening to something like a podcast, it's changing our energy field. Yes, it can change it for the positive. So perhaps limit your time on what you're doing on your phone. If you're listening to a positive podcast that's leaving you feel your cup feeling filled at the end, that's a very different use of your phone to if you're scrolling through social media, which whether we like it or not is going to make us feel stressed, whether we recognize it or not. So I think going back to your daughter's reaction again, you'll find that just detoxing from your phone a lot will have so many benefits for you and for your children. And once you've then ingrained that into a habit, you'll be like, why did I not do this sooner? It's so much easier than I thought, because being on social media is so bad for us most of the time. So setting really strict habits for that is absolutely vital.
So we spoke about the afternoon routine. So, what does your morning routine look like?
So my morning routine is quite regimented because I have a lot of rescue animals. So it's fantastic because it gets me up really early in the morning, but also gets me up in nature. So depending on the day of the week, my alarm will go off anywhere between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock. I'm normally awake earlier than that because we don't have curtains in our room and it's summer at the moment. So I'll be woken up with the morning sunlight, which isn't always a good thing, but it suits me. So what I do is the first thing I do when I get up, I take a couple of key supplements, and because some supplements are great to get into as soon as possible. And so I take those and then I have a large glass of water with a little pinch of salt in to remineralize my body. Sometimes I'll have lemon to it, sometimes I won't. So, what is key for that, and I do not check my phone. My alarm does go off on my phone, but it's in airport mode, and I don't check anything on my phone. So I'll get up, have my supplements, have some water whilst I'm soaking the horse food, because the horse feed needs about 15 minutes soaking before I feed them. I then get outside, and that's brilliant because even though we're not exactly known for our good weather in the UK, getting outside as early as possible in the morning to be exposed to the sun's rays, even if it's not sunny, it's the light, it's the different wavelengths of light that you need, even though they're blocking them out. I get outside, I'm out in nature, and this is an absolute godsend for me because then I'm outside for probably on and off about an hour, sorting out all the different animals, feeding them all. And I'm really, really strict at, like my cats and my dogs are all raw fed or home prepared food. So it's not like opening a tin of kibble or can, it's like properly prepared meals being put out for them. Whilst I'm doing that, I'm very conscious to be concentrating on them. So tuning in with all the animals, listening to all the birds, breathing, really trying to breathe. So I am a natural worrier. It's why I've done so much work on stress because I'm a natural worrier. My whole corporate career, I was like risk manager and project manager. So planning, 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 thinking ahead, all taking you out of the present moment. So my morning routine is about being present with my animals, being present with myself, and just doing that, I get quite a lot of steps in. And I'm out in nature. I'm not necessarily grounding because it's normally where a little bit muddy. So I have got shoes on, but I wear my barefoot shoes. So I'm as, grounded as I can be. If it's a nice weather, I'll then go and get my cup of tea once I've done the animals and I'll just drink that outside with my feet on the ground. And whilst I'm doing that, that's the first time I'll get my phone out and check for messages and things. As I work with a lot of people in different time zones, so quite often it's getting back to people that might be in Australia and I'm in the UK, so working with their time zones. So basically, my first hour is about hydration and movement and ideally getting outside. Now, not everyone's going to have as many animals as I do, but I think if you can have some basic principles where it's about what you do and what you don't do. So, hydrating your body and moving your body and getting outside if you can, really, really key. And what not to do is not jumping straight on your device and not jumping straight into your to do list with breathing exercises, because I do so much work with trauma animals, breathing was something I hadn't even thought about 10 years ago, despite the fact I was in natural health long before that. And when I did get into it, I realized my breath was terrible. I did not know how to breathe properly. And I was literally reverse breathing, which is a sign that your autonomic nervous system is really dysregulated. And this is what I love about a lot of these things. You can't lie to yourself. If you can't hold your breath for a certain amount of time, you can't, that's your body giving you a clue. You can't bullshit your way out of it. So it wasn't until I went to my first Joe Dispenza weekend retreat and we were doing some of the meditations, which involve a lot of breathing exercises. I was like, I can't do this. I cannot actually hold my breath. And that was like a light bulb moment for me where I realized I've got a real problem. I need to look into that. So over the last 10 years, I've done lots of breathing exercises Because I've also noticed how quickly it regulates children, it regulates animals, and it regulates your own stress levels. So now when I'm outside, it's automatic. I'm not consciously doing a specific exercise. I'm consciously breathing slower, deep belly breathing, slowing everything down. Because if you're working with a horse that's very traumatized, if you don't control your breathing, you're going to make the situation worse and more dangerous for both of you. And the other thing I want to say about my morning routine, supplements are a key part of it, because I think most of us are so deficient now, and however clean you try and eat, there's things missing. But then it's about breakfast, and breakfast is probably my weak point, because I have a lot, like most people, to fit into the days with my work, with the children. I'm not really at home much anymore. My daughter is back home at the moment, but with all the animals, helping look after my mum, with all my work, etc. I make life easy for myself. So sometimes I'll spend time and prepare a really good healthy breakfast, and other times I'll have one of my really healthy green shakes, so that I'm flooding my body with nutrition when I haven't necessarily got the time to prepare anything healthy. But making sure you're really conscious of what you're starting the day with food wise, and being realistic with yourself. So if you haven't got the time to take time over breakfast and prepare something really healthy, then have something in that is a good healthy substitute, like a really healthy green shake, or whatever your belief systems are around food, so that you're actually flooding your body with real nutrition as early in the day as you can.
As someone who identifies as a highly emotional person, I'd love to hear what are some of your favorite tools or daily practices for regulating emotions and protecting your energy?
Protecting your energy, one of the first things I would say is being aware of what's pushing your energy out. And toxins are a huge thing. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned over the last 30 years in holistic health, it's that if you get the toxins out safely and you flood your body with nutrition, which includes good quality water, then you will not be reactive and so emotional. High emotions are a sign of a dysregulated body and a dysregulated immune system. You can't deal with that if you don't have good gut health, for example. So the first thing is to say is, don't look at your emotions in isolation from the rest of your health. Look at it as a core part of it. So, what are you doing to give your body the nutrition that it needs? So, it's very well known now that certain nutritional deficiencies, like magnesium, like good quality omega oils, which you can't get in most fish oils these days because most of those are so contaminated, are really key to regulating your emotions. There's also some brilliant herbs that can do that. But you've really got to look at your gut health as well. So, number one is look at your emotions as a reflection of your overall health. Some people will show it in skin, some people show it in emotions. The second thing is what you're feeding yourself information wise. So, when we can't regulate our emotions, it's a really clear sign that there's a deeper problem going on. So this is where a lot of my education's been over the last few years. Like, a must read, if anyone hasn't read it, is Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. Have you read that book? Absolutely beautiful, because it's so simple. And what it realizes, there's two things that it will do is, one, that your view of the world is unique to you. And if there's something that's making it hard for you to release to manage your emotions, it's frustrating to say, but it's never about what's going on outside of you. We don't want to hear this because it means that it's down to us. But have you heard of Wayne Dyer?
No, I haven't.
Wayne Dyer he's dead now, but he was a beautiful spiritual teacher, and I love his work. He's got a brilliant body of work on the internet. But one of the things that really transformed my life, and there's certain sayings where they just hit you in a way you think, oh my God, I've got to take responsibility for this now. He has a lovely saying where he says, if you squeeze an orange, only orange juice can come out. Whether you freeze that orange, whether you cook it, whether it's moldy, whether it's fresh, whether it's organic or not, you can't squeeze an orange and get grapefruit juice out of it. It's always going to be some form or quality of orange juice. And that's an analogy for our emotions. Our emotions are because they're inside of us. The external trigger, whether you're cut, whether you're squeezed, whether you're crushed, It's nothing to do with what's inside of you. Those emotions can't be triggered by those actions if they're not already inside of you. So when you're really emotional, that's when we need to really look at the deep healing work. First point for me is always stop putting things in or around you that are causing you to get worse. So that means looking at the quality of the food, the quality of your water, getting some toxins out of you. EMF is huge. I know I've mentioned it a lot today, but the level of radiation, and I disagree with a lot of people when they're talking about with EMF protection, it's something I've studied a lot. You can't just go around with your meter and say it's low, because if anytime your phone's working, anytime you're in a shopping center, an office, a car, you're exposed to it. So you have to have personal protection with you that regulates the field, because you can't stop the signal, because if you stop the signal, it wouldn't work. So any device that's saying it's stopping the signal is an oxymoron. You've got to, yes, Faraday cages are one thing, but then you can't use your phone. So I think for the over emotional is look at the exposure that you're being in. And that will also be, what are you looking at in social media? What are you listening to? Who are the people that you're surrounding yourself to? And what can you do? What steps can you do to course correct on that? We can't remove ourselves from certain people necessarily. So you've got a pile of actions about what can I act on and what can't I act on. And then for me, Ebony, it's education. It's really good books. It's really good podcasts. It's really good trainings to understand, oh, this is why I'm feeling like this. You've got a beautiful Australian lady, and where's her book here? My cognizant thing, called Yvette Rose, who's written a brilliant book called Metaphysical Anatomy. I've interviewed her a few times on my podcast. She's brilliant. And you might be wanting to go down the route of looking, okay, what trauma have I not released? And we've all got it. And trauma's not a competition. You don't have to be heavily abused to be carrying trauma in your body. If it's affecting you emotionally, it needs dealing with. And particularly those of us that are parents, because we will, whether we like it or not, you can't fake it. You can't fake energy. You know, we will be passing it on whether we want it or not. As I said, certain books have helped me out massively. Once I understand, oh, okay, I'm reacting like this, I'm highly emotional, but this is about me. How can I help that? Might be educating myself so I don't get stressed about a lot of the toxins, vaccination debates, and things like this. You summed it up so beautifully off air, Ebony. When you feel that you've got enough knowledge to be comfortable in your decisions, they're not stressful anymore. And it's only about you being comfortable. You don't need to be able to quote every paper to justify your action. You just need to know, this is what I've decided for me, for my family. I don't need to convince anyone else, but I'm solid in that. And that takes a lot away of the emotional stress. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but for me, it's always, first of all, the quick wins. What can I look at in my life, whether it's toxins going into my body, toxins that have been into my body, whether it's informational toxin, whether it's the people around me, whether it's my habits, what can I stop that's constantly pushing me out of balance? Those are easy wins normally for people. And then what's left is like, okay, this is showing me what I need to deal with. What resonates with me? Do I want some tools just to understand it more? Do I want to do some healing work on it? It will be different for all of us, but it's an ongoing battle, because you'll find it's never a done job, if that makes sense. Because, you know, a lot of people, once they realize that a lot of the advice they've been given has been wrong and they've made choices for themselves or their children that they wouldn't do now, you go through that. It can be very stressful, but then you say, right, okay, what can I do about it moving forward?
So, touching on EMFs, what are some ways that you can recommend to protect ourselves? Because there's a lot of people like you and I who work from our computers and our mobile devices all day. So, what are some tips that you would give us?
I've done a lot of work on this, so I've got quite a few podcasts on this. But the first thing is it doesn't matter how much you're on your phone, or in it, we're being exposed to Wi-Fi everywhere. Children in schools, in hospitals, in restaurants, in shopping centres. So get a really good EMF protection device. Now, how do you know it's good? You check what research and study they've done. You never take the marketing information at face value. So you need to be prepared to ask good questions. There's some information that people can put on their website and some that you can't for various things. So ENF, not so much, but natural health products, they're not allowed to make medical claims. You have to have behind the scene conversations. But with EMF, any EMF device, you should be able to see physical results done by independent laboratories that show that they are bringing the body back into resonance. So the ones that I use, and there are many, many ones on the market, but the ones that I've studied, they've got the live blood analysis to show the effect that it's having on your blood when you use the device and when you're not. And they're all done independently. You can do sensible things like hardwire your computer and hardwire your phone so that you don't even need to have Wi-Fi on in the house. And that's really useful for someone that wants to detox your phone. So if you've just got a connector that you put into your phone, I've got one here that's over there, that you can't use your phone, you turn the Wi-Fi off, you don't use it, and you can only use it when you're sitting down in that area where you've got the hardwire connection. So that's a win-win. Always turn your Wi-Fi off at night, and if you've got anything like a smart meter in your home, have it removed or a Faraday box put against it. So those are some easy wins. When you're out and about, it's not so easy. So you have to have good EMF protection on your device or on you. But please ask the questions, because this is one of the downsides of social media. There's so many fake products out there, whether it's EMF, whether it's supplements, there's a lot of poor quality stuff out there. So that's a really, really important one. It's not about not being connected and using these devices. It's about protecting yourself. So wire it whenever. Never, ever, ever wear AirPods. They are absolutely lethal. When you see the blood results, and I can send you the video afterwards, Ebony, if your users want to see it, the live blood results of what happens when you're by the router, what happens when you wear AirPods. Never wear a smartwatch. Absolutely terrible. So there's some simple things like that you can do, but the rest of the time, it's like, like I mentioned earlier, I have my phone in my room with me, which I would never do normally. But my mother's on her own. She's had quite a few health scares recently. I'm the only one that can get to her in emergency. So what I do is I've got a really good house protector EMF device that I'm really satisfied with, that because I've done the research on it, that it works. And I've also got protection devices on all my mobile devices. So my laptop, my phone, the children's laptops, the children's phones, etc. So that's one thing that you can really do. So when you're finding out about these things, there's a really good organization called the Environmental Health Trust, and they've got a lady called Deborah Davis that has got loads of research onto this that people can go and look up. Unfortunately, they are pretty heavily censored, so quite often information is removed from there, but it's a brilliant resource for particularly for people with young children, because the brains of young children, the skull is much thinner, plus also they're growing much more rapidly, and their level of cell repair and regeneration is much quicker than it is once we're an adult. So they're much more susceptible to these harms. So again, keeping your children away from these devices and making sure you've got really good in-home protection is very much top of my list at the moment. Water quality as well is really top of my list as well. So yeah, there's a lot you can do. So it's not about not using the technology available to us. It's saying what is within my control to protect my family and protect myself.
How do you navigate the fear or the overwhelm of it all if you're someone listening and is very new to this world?
That's such a good question. And I think first and foremost is understanding that if you're not a psychopath, this will affect you emotionally. Because when people start investigating these things, it's beyond most people's comprehension that there would be so much in our shops and in our doctor's surgery and in our hospitals, in our schools, that is doing us so much harm. And it's then beyond most people's comprehension when they start looking into it further, that actually the authorities that be know it's doing us harm. It's not an accident, it's not lack of information. So when you start going down this avenue, it will raise high emotions in you, and fear and anger and frustration and injustice. It will be different for all of us. So I think the important thing when you're talking about emotions is not to mask them, to let yourself feel that. Understand you're completely rational in feeling that. If you take our food supply, doesn't take a genius to know that if you have to wear hazmat suits to go out and spray the food we're eating with chemicals, it's not going to be good for us to eat. You don't need to look at the scientific paper to understand that's ridiculous. So I think the fear is a real thing, and it's something I've had to really work with because it can get really depressing. When I first really looked into geoengineering, I found it so depressing because I knew about it. You know, my husband's the opposite. He buries his head in the sand. He's like, if I don't know about it, I don't need to worry. But he can do that because I'm doing the research for him and giving us all the protect and stuff. So let yourself feel the fear. Get in a like-minded community like yours and just allow yourself to express that frustration. Once you've gone through that, it's like most people, and you can access online the grief curve. You'll go through, when you're going through grief, you'll go through a whole range of emotions. And if you stop yourself going through them, they'll come back to bite you. So let yourself go through them and know that you'll come out the other side to then feel empowered. And then you'll say, right, thank goodness I know now, because now I can do something to protect myself and my family. And that's when you get connected with the right thing. And with the whole point of my podcast, and I think probably yours a big part of it, is having these discussions so that when people want to know the information, they've got experts in the field that have done the research for them that can sort of say, look, this is why you need to know about this. But as a parent, we do need to, we're making decisions for our children before they're even born, long before they're even born. So that's part of the reality of being a parent, whether it's for humans or animals. So then once you know that information, don't beat yourself up. That's the important thing. We can't know what we don't know. But once you do know, then you've got the choice to do something about it. And that's the good part of the internet now. There's a lot of resources out there, but you do have to be careful. Don't just listen to anyone. See if it resonates with you. Check them out, see whether they can back up what they're telling you. Because again, a lot of people are just trying to sell things, particularly the whole influencer culture we've got now. But results speak themselves. You can walk into a room and you can see and feel whether someone's vibrant. And if they are, I always make the joke, and you're not allowed to say it these days, but if I'm going to go to a fitness class, I want my fitness instructor to look fit. I'm not going to go to a fitness instructor where they're really overweight and they can't touch their toes. Similarly, you're not going to take nutrition advice from someone that doesn't look healthy. You're not going to take EMF advice from someone that can't back it up with research. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. I think the time we're in now, it's all about the quality of the questions you're asking, not being afraid to ask them and not thinking you need to know everything. Like you've probably found in your parenting journey, you don't need to write a scientific paper on something to know what's right or wrong. You do enough research to convince you, not someone else, and then you move forward with confidence.
Geoengineering, can you summarize quickly for those who aren't aware?
Geoengineering, a lot of people call chemtrails. And the reason that most of the professionals don't like us to use the chemtrails is people confuse that with condensation trails. And the term conspiracy theorist came from the CIA, where they wanted to shut down any discussions on John F. Kennedy's assassination. So they thought if they went out and widely labeled people that were asking the awkward questions as conspiracy theorists, it would shut the questioning down, because shame is a very easy and powerful way to shut people down if you're ridiculed.
No one
So
wants no one wants to be called a label. Like, God forbid
no one wants to be called
you're
a
a label.
label. Yeah. So what the geoengineering is, and you can look back, this has been going on actually since the First World War, so since the 1920s. And what they have been doing is doing experiments to spray in the sky all sorts of particulates, and there's loads of different forms of it. So that's one area, spraying toxins from the skies. So when I grew up, if you got a little child in nursery school to pour a picture of the sky, it had fluffy clouds in it. No one had crisscross clouds. Those are a normal condensation trail from a plane disappears really quickly, it evaporates, so it doesn't leave a permanent line in the sky. Anytime you're seeing the permanent lines in the sky and then these weird spread out almost rectangular clouds, that is because they've sprayed toxins into our sky. And there's a really good site called geoengineering watch.org that has got all the research papers for anyone. This is not pseudoscience. There's another form of and what they're doing for that is they're trying to control our climate. So climate change, as they say, is a scam. That doesn't mean we're not polluting the environment. We are, but what they're telling us, and anyone who's got basic biological knowledge knows that carbon dioxide is a gas of life. It's not killing us and it's not causing climate change, but we've been so brainwashed. But going back to the geoengineering, it links into the whole climate change agenda. And the whole climate change agenda is, I'm sorry, it's about controlling us to make us feel fearful, because if we're told we can't use our cars, we can't fly, we can't grow our own food, we've all got to live in little cities away from the countryside. But the geoengineering is got chemicals being sprayed from the sky that are poisoning us. They've proven it. There's aluminium, there's strontium, there's graphene oxide, and many scientists have measured this. And it's why so many of us, even when we're making clean living decisions, are still finding we've got these health, physical and mental health issues. So we do need to be aware of it now, and it's quite a complicated subject. The other aspect of geoengineering is the weather control. So for years, certainly since the 1950s, the military have been able to control the weather using things like HARP. Uh, we haven't got time to look into it, but you can look it up. And these are ionic machines that can change the chemical signature of our atmosphere, and they can cause floods. So most people heard of the floods in Dubai. In Australia, you've been very badly hit with it, with your floods and your fires. A lot of the reasons they have fires is because the aluminium oxide that's sprayed in the geoengineering sits on all the foliage, sits on the houses, which means that when a fire is ignited, it doesn't burn like a normal fire. It's actually catastrophic. And we've all seen these pictures where you've got melted metal cars and things like this, things that don't happen in a normal fire. So geoengineering now, I don't think anyone who's serious about any aspect of environmental health, their own health, can afford not to look into it. You can protect yourself a lot by daily good detox products that, again, have to be well researched, because there's a lot of things in there that could do more harm than good. But of course, that doesn't help us protect our environment. So our first priority is our family, our human and animal family. And please don't forget your animals. But secondly, the more of us that are talking about this, the less they can get away with it. Because if anyone can look up to their skies, I don't know what country you're listening for, you will all see these crisscross things of the fire. Yesterday of the UK, I live in the middle of the countryside, and we had a beautiful sunny day, and then out came the chemtrails in the sky, and then suddenly you get these weird clouds clouding over. And it's been well publicised, I think, all around the world, that the UK have now said they're running experiments to block out the sun. But by the time they tell you they're going to do it, they've been doing it for years. So if people want to look back into the Vietnam War, they were using geoengineering to spray poisonous chemicals to kill off all the forests so that they could see and kill off the enemy. It's not a conspiracy, it's real life facts. It's hard for most people to think, because most people would say, well, if they're killing us, they're killing themselves. But that doesn't stop psychopaths, that look at nuclear reactors, look at nuclear bombs, look at all the things they do. They think that they've got the resources to protect themselves. But most of the people that are making these decisions, if you look at them, they're not exactly a picture of health. So they're not looking at life in a rational way that we are.
I remember seeing or reading we were going through COVID times, and it said there was a photo and it had the top 10 murderers ever in the world, and all of them were presidents or prime ministers and governmental leaders.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to email you after this, definitely, and grab all of the things you've mentioned, especially anything that you have researched for detox. That would be amazing. I'd love to hear more, because we have a rainwater tank and we think that's great. But really, when we have a sprayed day, that's the first thing I think is. And my community a group chat and we can see it. We can, if we go to the park and there's a spray, there's always going to be a few kids, especially the kids, because they're so
Yeah,
much more vulnerable. The following day they'll wake up sick, and it just
yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like, these kids are kids that are raised so clean, so healthy. They haven't been jabbed, like, and yet
Mm.
they're having these, you can tell that it's different, it's something deeper. So, why do you think critical thinking is so important right now? And especially if someone's listening to this and they're, the gymnastics in the mind comes. Another lady who I spoke to that teaches people how to read inserts, of manufacture inserts, because she says, even as you're trying to tell somebody, no, I'm not trying to tell you, and say I'm right. I'm saying I'm just sharing what they have said, and they've said it. The manufacturer has written these inserts to say how to protect. Like, there's this of adverse reactions on each vaccine. It's written on the label. I'm just sharing that, but we get criticized the one sharing it. So if someone's listening and the gymnastics of going, their mind is like, well, how could they know? Of course not, because like you said, and unless when we think we're not people that could do that, doesn't mean we don't understand. So how can we strengthen our minds in a time of so much external pressure and this can be pretty dark, learning this?
Yeah. It really is very dark, and it's been a really difficult journey personally because, coming from a scientific background, because a lot of my friends work for Big Pharma and they're gorgeous people. They think they're doing the best. I will say that. My friends are not, most people that are not at the top of these organizations are not evil people. They genuinely believe they're doing the best. So I think it's really important to realize that we don't know what we don't know, but it is very, very dark. And I think one of the key things is to look back in history, even though most of our history, I cover that a lot on my channel, is not right. But when you look back at history, never has there been a time in history where people trying to censor information have been on the side of good. Most people think of communism when they think of that, but there's never one example that people can bring out where they were not letting you have the discussions. The second thing is there's not one single one of us that knows everything, but having critical thinking is absolutely key. And shame has been used as a control weapon. So I've got a whole series on my podcast and YouTube called Deprogrammed, and we look into mind control. We look at how we're programmed through the education system, the media, the news, the pharmaceutical system, the schooling system, everything. So I think when you realize that you have been bombarded with absolute lies from the moment we were born, be gentle with yourself. The second thing is don't let people use shame against you. So the classic thing I get on every post on social media, show me the double-blind placebo studies. Now, as a scientist, if you look up double-blind placebo studies, they are so easy to manipulate. I think a lot of people are realizing that science is like statistics. The results you get will depend on who's paying for the study. And actually, if you look at any pharmaceutical medicine, any pharmaceutical, and I'm not against the traditional medical system. We started this offline. We need hospitals. We need doctors. Sometimes there is a need for some pharmaceuticals whilst you're making the lifestyle changes to reassess. Okay, so it's not an all or a black or white situation. But when you look at any pharmaceutical product, every pharmaceutical product has what's known as a lethal dose 50. And that's how much do you need to take before it will kill you or kill 50% of the participants. So anytime you're taking them, it is slow poisoning. And that is a fact. You can look up, people can do their own research. The main thing I would say to people doing this that are more open minded, it's about us supporting each other to understand we don't need to prove you're not going to get a double-blind placebo study to show how some of the supplements I work with work because you only get those studies from the pharmaceutical companies that can sell this rubbish to us and make millions doing it. You can't patent dandelion leaf. So a lot of the reasons why they're telling this hasn't been proven. So building resilience yourself is key because so many people will push back. So when people say to me, show me the studies, the evidence to say this works. And I'm like, well, show me the studies and the evidence to show that your blood pressure tablets work. Have you looked at what the side effects are of those? Have you looked at the adverse effects? And this isn't about shaming. It's about you can't have one rule for one and one of the other. But at the end of the day, all of the, I like to call them the parasitic class, all of the mainstream media, the pharmaceuticals, the big banks, the people that are letting these systems run like this, shame is how it shuts us down. And when you're strong enough to say, look, how's it working out for you? If someone's watching this and they're really fit and healthy and vibrant in every aspect of their life, and financial comes into that as well, because a real way to get people into controllable is through lack of finances, so they have to comply, is we have to be resilient enough in ourselves to go back to common sense, understanding how the body works, understanding how nature works. And you're never going to get back to that common sense if you don't get out in nature and have that connection with it. So when people are going into the fear stone and they're being ridiculed, the people, when you understand that the people that are ridiculing you are because they're scared, they're trying to bully you. No bully is happy in themselves. No one who shames someone else for sharing information. And I would say what's kept me going, and it makes me really emotional when I think about this, is I don't know if you've heard of someone called Andrew Wakefield. And Andrew Wakefield was the main whistleblower that blew the whistle. He's a doctor that's subsequently been struck off on the MMR jab, the measles, mumps, and rubella jab. And when I had my first child, and my friends, quite a few of them had children before me, and we were the generation when it was just coming out that there was a link between the MMR jab and autism. And I went from physically seeing friends have normal children to having the jab and seeing their children change forever. Now we know there's a lot that can be done about that, but back then we didn't. And Andrew Wakefield blew the whistle and showed that the MMR jab was causing autism, and he got shut down, ridiculed, career ended, and everything. He's subsequently made loads of movies on it. He's never stopped blowing the whistle. For me, I will be forever thankful to Andrew Wakefield because something about him made me listen and made me investigate that MMR jab before I had my children vaccinated. And he had his whole career ridiculed. But if something's that important to you, you need to ask yourself, why are they ridiculing me? Because it's in my benefit and your benefit, Ebony. What do we benefit from telling people the risks of vaccine? There's no personal benefit to us at all. There's only ridicule. But if I can help one mother just look into it and look at the balance side of the equation, then I'm satisfied and I've got big enough shoulders to take that. It's not easy, it's upsetting, particularly when the ridicule comes from the people that are meant to be closest to you. But I've seen both my sisters, I've got a twin sister and elder sister, and both of them have got major heart issues now after taking the COVID vaccine. And I tried to warn them and I tried to warn them because as a biologist, I didn't need to wait for the science. It was bloody obvious that when you look at what they were doing, it wasn't tested. There's no vaccine that's actually been tested as safe and effective. So I think this is where we have to have the courage of our convictions. If there's one thing that being a parent does is, and I don't differentiate whether you're a parent of a human or an animal, when you're responsible for making decisions for another life than your own, you have to take that seriously because I have got parents, one of my best friends when my son was born, her daughter, her third daughter, had the swine flu vaccine and was the youngest child in the world to get narcolepsy and cataplexy from it. Their journey is horrific, and she's written a book called Waking Matilda. Now, she doesn't speak to me anymore because she's still very pro-vaccine, even though they know the vaccine did that. I would speak to her. I haven't got any problem. Being a parent is the most rewarding and difficult job in the world. We all make mistakes. It's not about superiority, but it's my job. If Andrew Wakefield hadn't lost his career and warned me, I could have a very severely vaccine injured child here because my son and my daughter are really sensitive to chemicals. So don't let people bully you into submission. You know, when we sit there at the end of our lives and think, what did I do? That basic thing of do no harm. Look, wait. You don't need to. Don't make a quick decision. Give yourself time. You don't need to take your baby into the baby clinic. Even if you've had some vaccines, you can stop and do your research. Like all my animals are rescue animals. Before they come to me, they're vaccine, chemical wormers, chemical. There's nothing I can do about that, but I'm responsible for what happens to them once they're in my care, and once I can make difficult decisions. So pick your battles. Connect with like-minded people. Don't think you need to understand the science to know what your gut's telling you. That's a really big message to me, from me to people. You don't need to try and blow people away. If people are asking you for the science behind it, it's because they're not sure, not because you're not sure.
Wow, what an amazing episode. That was incredible. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for what you're doing, because it gives me so much joy when I see young mums like you. It really makes me emotional, because you're the ones that are going to really be making a difference in this. People resonate with people their own age going through the similar things. And I think you're making such a difference with the work you do, Emily. So thank you so much. But to find me, on Instagram, I'm Catherine Edwards Life, Life. And then I've got a website, catherineedwards.life. What I try and do on that website, I see my role as a connector. On that website, you can find links to my YouTube channel and my podcast and my favorite products. And I do the products because I've really done the research on there. And these are the ones that I think are life changing, like the water filters, like the EMF, only the supplements on there I trust. So I see my job is to do a lot of the research of people, because I love researching and asking those difficult questions. So I'd say my website is the hub of everything, catherineedwards.life. From there, you can connect to my courses, my consults, my recommended products, my blogs. I'm trying to get better at getting them up. It's just a lack of time. I need more help, really. But a lot of the work we do, it doesn't make money. I think a lot of people think that when you've got a podcast and things like this, so no, so a lot of the stuff and research we do doesn't make money, but I'm never going to stop putting the information out there, because there's nothing worse as a parent or an animal parent to realize that you've been lied to and that you're continuing to harm your child or your animal, when someone could have told you a really simple change to make and you just didn't know.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I do also have a discount code for all of our listeners for Catherine's courses. So you can hit me up, or I'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, Catherine. I really, really got so much out of it. I even got emotional a few times throughout it too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll be inviting you back on mine. Thanks everyone for listening.